Today we are looking at 2 Kings chapter 13. Israel's king Jehoahaz. In the 23rd year of Judah's king Joash, son of Ahaziah, Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, became king over Israel and Samaria, and he reigned 17 years. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight, and followed the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit. He did not turn away from them. So the Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he handed them over to King Hazael of Aram and to his son Ben-Hadad during their reigns. Then Jehoahaz sought the Lord's favor, and the Lord heard him, for he saw the oppression the king of Aram inflicted on Israel. Therefore the Lord gave Israel a deliverer. They escaped from the power of the Arameans. Then the people of Israel returned to their former way of life. But they didn't turn away from the sins that the house of Jeroboam had caused Israel to commit. Jehoahaz continued them, and the Asherah pole also remained standing in Samaria. Jehoahaz did not have an army left except for 50 horsemen, 10 chariots, and 10,000 foot soldiers, because the king of Aram had destroyed them, making them like dust at threshing. The rest of the events of Jehoahaz's reign, along with all his accomplishments and his might, are written in the historical records of Israel's kings. Jehoahaz rested with his ancestors, and he was buried in Samaria. His son Jehoash became king in his place. Israel's king Jehoash. In the 37th year of Judah's king Joash, Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, became king over Israel and Samaria, and he reigned 16 years. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He did not turn away from all the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit, but he continued them. The rest of the events of Jehoash's reign, along with all his accomplishments and the power he had to wage war against Judah's king Amaziah, are written in the historical record of Israel's kings. Jehoash rested with his ancestors, and Jeroboam sat on his throne. Jehoash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Elisha's death. When Elisha became sick with the illness from which he died, King Jehoash of Israel went down and wept over him, and said, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." Elisha responded, "Get a bow and arrows." So he got a bow and arrows. Then Elisha said to the king of Israel, "Grasp the bow." So the king grasped it, and Elisha put his hands on the king's hands. Elisha said, "Open the east window." So he opened it. Elisha said, "Shoot." So he shot. Then Elisha said, "The Lord's arrow of victory. Yes, the arrow of victory over Aram. You are to strike down the Arameans in Aphek until you put an end to them." Then Elisha said, "Take the arrows." So he took them. Then Elisha said to the king of Israel, "Strike the ground." So he struck the ground 3 times and stopped. The man of God was angry with him and said, "You should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times. Then you would have struck down Aram until you put an end to them. But now you will strike down Aram only 3 times. Then Elisha died and was buried. Now Moabite raiders used to come into the land in the spring of the year. Once as the Israelites were burying a man, suddenly they saw a raiding party, so they threw the man into Elisha's tomb. When he touched Elisha's bones, the man revived and stood up. God's mercy on Israel. King Hazael of Aram oppressed Israel throughout the reign of Jehoahaz. But the Lord was gracious to them, had compassion on them, and turned toward them because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He was not willing to destroy them. Even now he has not banished them from his presence. King Hazael of Aram died, and his son Ben-Hadad became king in his place. Then Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, took back from Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael, the cities that Hazael had taken in war from Jehoash's father Jehoahaz. Jehoash defeated Ben-Hadad 3 times and recovered the cities of Israel. That is 2 Kings 13. Interesting events in there. The man's Elisha being buried and the man's bones being thrown quickly into the spot where he was buried, and when he touched Elisha's bones, he revived. Miracles after he died. And another interesting passage in there that we just read, and I just don't get it. I feel a little bad for the king myself, and maybe it's just a lack of understanding I have. Maybe after walking with the Lord 40 years, I should have a better understanding of this. But I don't make a living in the Word. I read it a lot, but I make a living working another industry that doesn't have me just sitting in my Bible all the time. I so But it's interesting to me, that Elisha tells him to take the bow and arrows and shoot one out the window, and then he tells him to strike the ground. Doesn't tell him why he's doing it or that there's any impact or prophetic impact on what he's doing, and he strikes the ground 3 times. And it's interesting that the guy just does what the prophet says to him. I can't imagine. I'd imagine I'd be sitting there. Why do you want me to shoot arrows into the ground? What's the point of that? I could see myself getting into an argument with Elisha. But the king does it, and he does it 3 times. And then it says Elisha gets upset with him. And he says, well, you should have struck it 5 or 6 times, because now you're only going to strike a ram 3 times. And every time I read that passage, I feel a little bad for the king. It's just like, you told me to strike the ground. You didn't say how many times. You didn't say why I was doing it. And there's a part of me that figures and assumes there must be some reasonable explanation to the text that makes sense, but for now it's a mystery for me. And that, as we read the Bible, we are finite. There's all sorts of limitations we have in understanding the Bible. As we read, study, meditate, answers come our way, and the Holy Spirit can use different methods. He can just one day we're reading and we can just see something. It's just like, oh, hey, wait, it's making sense to me today, and it didn't before. Or perhaps we run across that book that we're reading, that someone comments on something and it makes it clear, a commentary or whatever. Or we hear a sermon that makes it clear. And maybe there's just, well, not maybe, there's just some things I'm sure that we're going to go to the grave just not knowing. And then in eternity, I trust that the Lord will fill in the gaps and help us to, not help us, but will cause us to see all the things and the mysteries and the stuff that bothers us. But we are reading through the Bible in 3 years. We're not clearing everything up. We're not commenting on everything. As I've said already a few times, I do plan on doing videos where I comment more, but for now, my focus is just reading through it and having a place where people can turn and see and hear the Bible read on at a simple pace, a chapter a day. Click it, whether you do it in it'll be, obviously this video when it's done, when the series is done, it'll be 1,095 videos, 365 times 3, 1,095 videos to get through the Bible. And click one at a time, and in 3 years you get it done. And it's for whoever watches this. A part of me does this with the idea that when I pass, assuming YouTube lasts and continues on, my descendants, my kids, grandchild or grandchildren will be able to click on this and see Dad or Grandpa, hear his voice, see him. So that's part of my motivation in doing this kind of thing. But I would like to comment on some things, because I've had many mysteries, and I think I've got some of them figured out by the grace of God, by His Holy Spirit, by other people that have influenced my life through sermons, messages, radio shows, podcasts, books, whatever. And maybe not. Maybe some of the things I think I've got figured out or that I understand are wrong. That's entirely possible, and I'm sure that's the case in some circumstances. I'm fallible, I'm finite, and no matter what view I might hold, there's some great and holy men who are holier than me and smarter than me that hold my views on some things. But there's equally guys that are holier and smarter than me that do not hold those views and that disagree with those views on certain things I hold. So it's always good to approach all of this with humility. Okay to have confidence, but always be willing to learn and to take new data and change our minds when we conclude that, yeah, you know what, this makes more sense than what I was thinking before. And but anyway, just every time I read that passage, I'm thinking, poor guy, just one of those mysteries for me right now. So thanks for watching, listening. Thanks if you've hung around to the end, listening to me babble on and just think about out loud about this passage. And I hope to see you back here tomorrow. Hope you have a great day as we're going through the weekend.